Good morning, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, participants. Good morning and welcome to this morning's conversation. I call it conversation on the just ended AU Summit. For those joining online, you are welcome. And those here in Addis Ababa, you're welcome as well. My name is Andy Asamoah, and I am the head of the African Peace and Security Governance Program at the Institute for Security Studies. And I have the privilege of being the host of today's panel. And so thanks so much for coming. As we all know, the 37th AU Summit, which took place here in Addis Ababa, just ended a few days ago. The summit happened against a backdrop of various important issues in Africa, but also a very difficult 2023. And so we all thought that we went into the summit with high expectations of and knowledge also of the numerous challenges requiring very urgent continental policy attention. And from the range of the issues that marked the summit, as we all know, about 18 agenda items made it at the Executive Council level and about 16 at the Assembly level on a wide range of issues, from peace and security, issues of G20, Team of the Year, election of senior leadership of the AUC, institutional reform, and membership of the PSC, among many other things. And we also know that a number of reports were also tabled. Quite we had before the summit and the deliberations that happened. This morning, we are just asking very simple questions, two questions. What are the key takeaways from the summit so far? And then what are the implications of those takeaways for Africa in 2024 and beyond, and the wide range of issues that we deal with? And you know, today we are privileged to have three distinguished ambassadors who will help us with their thoughts and insights. And these are very excellent individuals who understand the issues in a very deep way. And we consciously kept today's deliberation very ambassadorial. So you will find that all the panelists are ambassadors. We believe that the wisdom that they have is a key component of the way forward, as much as outsiders may observe and come with their new readings as well. And so today we will have Ambassador Churchill Monono, Ambassador of the Republic of Cameroon to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the AU, will be here on the panel today. And then Ambassador Rebecca Otengo Amoge, also on the panel today. I will introduce them just before they speak again. And then Ambassador Edward Makaya, very distinguished excellency as well. And so please take note of the panelists. But before I step away and give them the room to speak, I just want you to take note of the following important issues. Please take note that this event is being streamed live, and so the usual Chatham House rules do not apply. You may be quoted without your permission. I once found my name quoted as an ISIS researcher, and I was wondering how I was affiliated. So ISIS instead of ISS. And I was, okay, very interesting. So it's good to Google your name from time to time. You never know. For our online audience, please keep your mics off until you are called upon to make a submission or ask a question. But please keep all your questions and your inputs coming, because we will be monitoring the chat function as well. And then during the meeting, a poll will be launched online. Please take some time to fill it for us. For those of you in the room, you will find an evaluation form on your desks. Please fill them for us because they help us perform better. And please remember that this event is being co-organized by the IPSS, Institute for Security Studies, and the Institute for Peace and Security Studies, IPSS, and Amani, Africa. Thank you so much once again for joining. So all that is cleared, and so it's time for us to launch out into our discussions. We're going to go this way. The panelists will have 10 minutes to reflect on pre-assigned topics, after which I will have a round of 2 questions, depending on the submission, and then we will open for discussions. Looking at the interest in the room and the very high attendance, we want to make it as interactive as possible. So please bear with us. So I'm going to introduce the first panelist, Ambassador. As we all know, different actors have had different outcomes from this summit. If you read online, some are diplomatic incidences. The civil society space have their own complaints. It's a wide range of issues. And so I think we need to start on the basis of asking ourselves, from a very objective perspective, what are the key outcomes of the issues that were discussed? And to help us set the stage on that, answering that, I would like to invite our first panelist, Ambassador Churchill Ewumbwe Monono, Ambassador of the Republic of Cameroon to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the African Union. So Ambassador, please, you can be free to sit or come as you will. And please, you have 10 minutes, after which we can discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Andy. And once more, I'm happy to be here to be part of this conversation. Like you've said, I should set the stage in identifying the key takeaways. I would say that, before we really have the official decisions of the assembly, it takes some time because you have the drafting committee that will sit and then come out with the decisions before they are published as official. So whatever we are saying now as key takeaways are unofficial. So while waiting for the drafting committee to make them official. That said, there are a dozen or so key takeaways that came to my mind. The first is the attendance and participation. You had about 50 delegations that were present here, 26 heads of state. We had 6 prime ministers and heads of government. We also had 7 vice presidents and 7 foreign ministers as heads of delegation. So it was well attended. The other thing is that we had about 5 non-African delegations, Canada, UAE, Brazil, Palestine, and Portugal. We also had about 14 international organizations, including the Commonwealth and OIF, which were represented at level by their secretaries general. So in terms of attendance and participation, it was well attended. The second issue that is a takeaway is the spirit of consensus and African solidarity that reigned. Because, for the past 2 years, we have been saying here, and in fact, during the IPSS deliberations, that decision-making has been very difficult, and that maybe we might be thinking more in terms of elections. But this 37th summit gave a totally different impression of all of this, because we saw for a very long time that the Africans were, there was a return of the spirit of consensus. First, on the 9th, we realized that the northern region came out with a consensus candidate as the the chair for 2025. That was Mauritania. Then on the 14th, during the deliberations of the candidatures, the ministerial committee, we saw a lot of consensus. First, with regard to the PGA, the UN presidency of the General Assembly, there was a consensus. South Africa withdrew for Cameroon. With regard to the UN Security Council, we also saw consensus where Tanzania, Mauritius, and Madagascar withdrew for Somalia. With regard to the third committee, third commission of the UN, we saw Mauritania withdrawing for Burundi. And then there was also a consensus on Zimbabwe for the seat of the UN Security Council. We also saw, for 2027, we also saw this spirit of consensus reigning in the elections for the Peace and Security Council. First, before we came, there was consensus in the West, South, and Center regions. So they all presented some consensus candidates. But then we had the East, which had many candidatures. But before we went to the elections, there was consensus again. Here we had Tanzania and Uganda, which were the main, which went unopposed because Eritrea and Ethiopia withdrew. So there is now a spirit of consensus in Africa that we want to speak with one voice. And it is very important. That is one of the key takeaways of this summit. The other thing is the new faces in Addis Ababa and or in terms of African affairs that we'll see. We will see there's a new president or chairperson for the AU, the Mauritanian president, and then also for the Executive Council, there's a new one. We also saw that for the first time, the Executive Secretary of the ECA addressed, the new Executive Secretary of the ECA addressed the Executive Council. And we also had a new foreign minister of Ethiopia. So these are we have new guards, new takeaway, new actors. And then we'll have to deal with them for the next year. So this was another important takeaway. With regard to relations with the G20, the summit also set the modalities of participation and also the key priorities. There was also the issue of institutional reforms. We saw that President Kagame, the champion, presented his final report. And there was also a new champion that emerged, that is President Ruto William of Kenya. So that was another important takeaway. With regard to the issue of the Ministerial Committee on Counterterrorism, which many people were expecting, the issue was reverted for further consultations. That is a takeaway. We also saw the issues of peace and security in the continent. The various normal hotspots were highlighted, but then we also had the return of interstate conflicts as was manifested by some of the hard language we saw between Somalia and Ethiopia, and also the Rwanda and DR Congo. In terms of the peace and security in the world, we saw the position on Palestine and the declaration on Palestine that was adopted with some reservations from, I think, the Zambia. We also saw that there were some voices on how to handle the issue of the Israeli observer status. With regard, another important takeaway was the new configuration of the AU Peace and Security Council. You see that 3 countries were re-elected: Uganda, Tanzania, and the Gambia. 5 were ongoing. They had ongoing mandates. That is Cameroon, Nigeria, Morocco, Namibia, and Djibouti. But then we have 7 new members of the Peace and Security Council. That's Equatorial Guinea, Congo, DR, Egypt, Angola, Botswana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Sierra Leone. Of importance is the fact that this is the first time since the creation of the PSC that the Congo Democratic Republic is becoming a member. This 37 summit also saw the appointment of key actors. We have the executive secretary of the Secretary General of the AFCFTA was reappointed. That is His Excellency Menem Wankele. And then the APRM also had a new CEO, that's Ambassador Marie-Antoine Quatre. That was an important takeaway. One other thing that we could call as takeaway is the adoption of some of the important legal instruments. And here I'm thinking of the protocol to the African Charter on the Human and People Rights, the one related to the specific aspects of statelessness in Africa. It was very important because that instrument has been lying fallow for the past 3 years or so. So it was a major breakthrough. Then there was also the election of the inaugural council of the African Space Agency. Then the theme of the year is also important for 2025. That is justice for Africans and people of African descent through reparations, which was in line with the Accra Proclamation, and it is under the championship of President Nana Akufo-Addo. And then, of course, the calendar was also well established. We know we have the 49th PRC between the 14th and 31st of January 2025. We will also have the mid-year coordination, which is first in June 2024 in Accra. After that, we'll have the 49th PRC, the 14th and 31st of January 2025, then 46th Executive Council on the 12th and 13th of February, and also now the 38th Ordinary Assembly, 15th and 16th of February 2025. So in a nutshell, like we say, you know, since nothing is yet official, since we are still going through the drafting, the process, so now what we are saying as takeaway is just like the famous story of the 3 blind men and the elephant. So I am saying what I see and how I feel it. I know there are others who are also, they will say that there are other issues that I might not have highlighted. And we'll all sit here now and discuss. Well, another issue is the Bureau. The Bureau of the Assembly, we have Mauritania as chair. The first vice chair is Angola. The second is Congo Republic. And then we also have Ghana as third. And then we have the Comoros as rapporteur. That is also another important. So that is how we are going to operate between now and 2025. I don't know whether there are some other issues that maybe I did not, I could not get as I speak, but those are the issues I could get as takeaways for now. And maybe when we start open the discussions, we'll examine other takeaways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor. I think that was a very extensive run through the various issues that came up for discussions. But Ambassador, just to give you something to chew on, I know there are a number of questions in the room, which we will come to, but there are a couple of things that I was reflecting on as you spoke. I know you kept it essentially to script, but I also know you are an intellect. Your book may be coming out very soon. And so I was thinking if you could also just step back a bit and assess the summit vis-a-vis all the challenges we are having on the continent. But I would like you to reflect on that, but I'll come back to you for an answer, if you don't mind. So that beyond everything as per the script, you can give us a sense of what your thoughts are completely off the record, And then also, we saw from the opening statements all through, if you check online, the Gaza issue came up. It looks like it had a shine. It became a bit center stage. Also, how that came about, if you have any reflection, if possible. And then also one last thing before I introduce the second speaker, please also reflect on, I know that the reform was a major issue, and the handing over from President Kagame to President Ruto is a significant outcome, which you emphasized. I think what we are missing from those of us outside the boardroom is really what the assessment of President Kagame was, and how you settled on the new person who is taking over, President Ruto. But I just wanted to reflect on those so that the first round of questions, we can discuss that one, Ambassador. Now, looking at all the range of issues which came up, you will notice that institutional reform was key, as well as the new composition of the PSC. And to guide the panelists, we sort of gave them a sense of key areas to reflect on before we discuss. And so one of the key things we thought we need to drill down on is the new membership and composition of the PSC and what it means in terms of implications and opportunities for the management of peace and security challenges and governance issues on the continent. And we thought that Ambassador Rebecca, with her extensive understanding of the PSC, and a PSC member for the last couple of years, who is also going again, which shows the excellent work she's done, will be someone who will give us so much insights into that. So I would like to invite Ambassador Rebecca Omuge, right? Amuge or Tengo, to help us understand the PSC's new composition. Please remember that she is the ambassador of the Republic of Uganda to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the African Union. Ambassador, please, you have 10 minutes.
I would like to begin by saying that you are all welcome back from the summit, the 37th summit, which made Addis Ababa very hectic and at one point a little crazy. Dr. Handy, when you invited me, amongst others, with my brothers, Ambassador Churchill and Ambassador Makaya, to offer our reflection. By the time I saw the invitation, I could not make up what exactly I was supposed to do because I was really, really exhausted. But I want to thank God that today we are here. Right? You are asking about the implications and opportunities for the management of African governance, peace, and security challenges. I would just like to agree with you that when we met at the assembly, it was at the time when the continent is confronted with many challenges, including deficit in governance, conflicts, and constitutional changes of government, terrorism, violent extremism, climate change, and of course, as mentioned by my brother, some kind of conflict between member states. Would just like to reflect on the Great Lakes region. We've witnessed the request of DRC of the withdrawal of MONUSCO. Also the withdrawal of the East African Community Regional Force and the entry of SADC in the mission, as a mission in DRC, which commenced immediately the operation against the M23. Uganda expects the new membership to bring in another building block to allow us reflect on the reasons why the problems in the Eastern DRC continue to persist, despite the best endeavors, and seek to find the lasting solution to the structural root causes of this persisting situation. We can't live without mentioning Sudan, that the war continues, and it was ongoing even when we were meeting. With the worsened humanitarian situation, I would only say that the guns have simply refused to go silent. We witness more and more initiatives, sometimes speaking at cross purposes, working for the same purpose, but speaking differently and working in silos. Coming to IGAD, we observe that the quartet of heads of state and government that was formed and appointed to deal with the issues of South Sudan just had to end its work, just abruptly. We have noted with delight the appointment of the high-level ad hoc panel on Sudan, which is required to work with all Sudanese stakeholders to ensure that it's all inclusive and towards the shift, restoration of peace, constitutional order, and stability in Sudan. The high-level panel commenced its work and held some meetings, including with the Peace and Security Council and others at the sidelines of the assembly. Our prayers, like many other members, is that the people of Sudan are all included, and the international community, we expect them to extend necessary cooperation to support the panel towards successful execution of their mandate. We'd also like to plead with our external partners to avoid external interference negatively. It is therefore expected that the new members will bring some new energy and add value to the work of the council in mainstreaming some of the positive ideas that may not have found space in the decision-making corridors of the council so far, so as to finally bring this conflict to the end. I insist that the new membership have new building blocks because the foundation has been set. We need to caution that the success of the council is not dependent on one member state or individuals. Our own sense is that our members all mean very well for the progress of the continent. Sometimes progress depends on several factors and others beyond Addis Ababa. The effectiveness and of the Peace and Security Council, therefore, is at a large part dependent on the implementation of its decision. We can make several decisions. If they're not implemented, then it has no effect. In many, if not all instances, we rely on member states to give effect to the decisions of the council, whether it is a matter of suspension or imposition of sanctions, or dealing with the cessation of hostilities in places like Sudan, or situation in Somalia, or the Sahel, or the Lake Chad Basin. All these decisions are supposed to be made effective by the member states. If they do not listen, then the decisions do not have any positive impact. We therefore would like to say that what happens in the council is sometimes thinking in diversity, but with the same purpose of making Africa better. We do think that there are areas that we can build on. And as the delegation of Uganda, we think sometimes we leave baskets of knowledge, skills, experience out of the council. We have a proposal that there are member states or delegations that have done a lot of work, and they can still provide their input in one way or the other. The council must find a way of working with other member states that have been in the council and have left the council. And we continue with the work because we all work for the benefit of this continent, Africa. And therefore, Dr. Handy, for now, I leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellency. So issues coming from a plea for external actors not to interfere in the numerous issues on the continent. And the fact that the new members are now they have an opportunity because they're going to serve as building blocks for the way forward around issues of implementation, the role of member states in that, and the diversity of thoughts in the PSC has also come up, and the need for the PSC to find a way, a working relationship, or to involve those who have exited and those who are there towards making sure that decisions and the work of the council itself become much more effective in addressing peace and security challenges. Excellency, I was just thinking, two things came to mind when you spoke. I know that from what you said, and also what we know in terms of the insecurity on the continent, the work of the new members are essentially cut out for them. Wide range of peace and security challenges. I would really appreciate if, from a very personal place of experience, you could offer some advice to those who are coming, because increasingly we see interest in more members coming to the council. But those of you who are there are the ones who appreciate the enormity of the work, the politics that surrounds it, and the pressure that comes with it. And so I will come to you for some advice for the incoming members. And then I was just thinking this question, I don't know if you might be the most appropriate person. Ambassador Churchill touched on the number of delegations that were at the summit. He gave the numbers. What I'm not sure is actually the number of heads of state who came. But I can tell you the rumor in civil society spaces. The civil society people are saying that the attendance of heads of state was actually lower than expected. And so the question is, looking at the issues in Africa, as you enumerated, vis-a-vis those who came, do we think that, is there growing apathy at the highest level in seeing the AU as a place for solution? And should we be concerned as citizens, you know? I'll come to you for your reflections on that. Thank you so much. So we also gave one area for reflection, which is the G20. We know that for many of the diplomatic representation in Addis Ababa, there's so much search for answers around the G20 question. So the AU wanted to be there, the AU now is there, and so what? And so the summit and the deliberations around issues of modalities for representation and all of that, how do we manage it? And we thought, everyone I spoke to said Ambassador Makaya is the one to speak to on this one. And so we decided to give him 10 minutes to tell us everything that happened around the G20 representation issues. So Ambassador, we would like to hear from you in terms of the AU's membership of the G20. What do you think are the modalities and approaches for securing benefits? You know, in South Africa, there's one word that is very important. Is it beneficiation? How are we going to benefit as Africans, and how do you plan to approach that? Thank you so much, Your Excellency.
On is me, who's belongs to the old school. Program director and dear colleagues, my fellow panelists, we greet you this morning, the 22nd of February, 3 days or so after the very exhausting PRC process, Executive Council, and the summit itself. But here we are because we value the work of this institute, one of the premier institute on peace and security on the continent. That's why we are here. Permit me to thank the Institute for Security Studies for inviting us to this seminar to reflect on the matter of the AU's G20 membership, the modalities and approaches to secure benefits for Africa. The post-AU Summit seminar has become very important as it provides an opportunity to outline the key discussion points and summit decisions. The attendance that we have this morning attests to the strategic importance that many of the colleagues that happen to be in Addis Ababa place on this seminar. I've been asked to speak on the AU's G20 membership and the modalities. Maybe let me preface my input by stating the obvious. The obvious being that the AU and the peoples of Africa have welcomed with great anticipation the inclusion of the AU as a permanent member of the G20. This is in recognition of the importance of a continent-wide African representation in the global economic governance. The AU's participation, therefore, in the G20 provides us, as peoples of Africa, a unique opportunity to advance our collective priorities, interests, and position on the global stage. This is a big development for our union. This is a big development for our union. That the AU will be sitting with global powers exchanging views on how we transform the global economic architecture. But most importantly for Africa, the AU's participation would contribute to Africa's economic growth by attracting investments and exploration of opportunities for trade expansion with the biggest economies that we have in the world. Even the World Bank has forecast a positive GDP growth for Africa. This underlines the potential for Africa's economic advancement because of its G20 participation. Mindful of this unique opportunity, AU member states have adopted what we call preliminary priorities that will inform Africa's participation in the G20. In no particular order, these priorities include the following. 1, accelerating the implementation of Agenda 2063, linking it to the broader United Nations Sustainable Development Goals Agenda 2030. That's the first one. The second one, we are hoping to intensify our advocacy towards the reform of the international financial architecture. Third, we hope to enhance agricultural output while addressing international food security. Fourth, we are hoping to achieve a just energy transition, electricity for all our respective countries. and renewable energy. Second last, we do hope to enhance trade and attract investment to support AFCFTA, which is our premier project for continental economic integration. The last one, we are hoping that working with these big economies, they will assist us on the continent to boost vaccine manufacturing and strengthening capacities of public health systems to respond to pandemics. Those are what we call foundational priorities that the summit adopted this past weekend. And these priorities will be in place for at least 3 years, after which the AU will have to review them. Now, so that is now that's now the substance of why we will be participating at the AU, at the G20. What mechanism are we going to use in that participation? Assembled Decision 845 of February 2023 does provide the legal basis of the AU's participation. And that decision indicates that the AU will be represented by the chair of the union, assisted by the chair of the commission at the G20 summit. So agreed, decision. Now, in developing the modalities that we are speaking of, we then looked at the layer below the G20 summit, which is the sectoral G20 ministerial meetings. We had to think deep on this one. There were original 2 options. Option 1 was to say, consistent with the interpretation of that decision 845, that the ministers from the country that chairs the union would then participate in the G20 ministerial meetings. In further reflection, guided by the fact that this is an AU G20 seat, we reach a consensus to say that at sectoral ministerial meetings, the AU will be represented by the chairs of specialized technical committees, the ministers, whether it's science and technology, agriculture, trade, economic, those are the ministers that will be, the chairs will be representing the AU. And they will all be supported by relevant commissioners. In other words, if it is about agriculture, so the commissioner for agriculture will be supporting that minister who would come from any country that happens to chair that STC. And in the main, this was driven by our desire to ensure continuity. The chairs of STCs occupy that position for at least 2 years. behind them, they have a bureau of ministers. In terms of how we then elect the chairs, normally the first vice chair or vice president moves up to take over. So you are guaranteed of continuity and by extension, effective participation. That's what the AU wants. Now let's move to a layer below in the context of the G20, which are Sherpas. There's a Sherpa, there's a Sue Sherpa. Pending the release of the final assembled decision. I don't want to at this forum indicate which is the final consensus. There are two positions on Sherpas. There's a view that the Sherpa should be appointed by the chair of the union. And the Sue Sherpa should be appointed by the chairperson of the commission. There's another view that says, no, the Sherpa should be appointed by chairperson of the commission, the Sue Sherpa appointed by the chair of the union. So motivations have been given. So I need to concede, program director, that as I'm standing here, I don't know what was the final ruling of the chair on these two issues. So I don't want to, if the ruling was not clear, we still have a bit of time between now and the Executive Council in July or June, where I believe that part might be tightened up. So for now, let me, if you allow, let me not go further than that. Now, there's a key element with regards to the AU's participation at G20, which is the financing thereof. How are we going to finance our participation? So member states were very clear, unambiguous, that the participation of the AU at the G20 shall be financed by the AU member states through regular budget. Of course, grants from 10 African financial institutions would be most welcomed. That's what the Assembly agreed. And member states were very clear that participating at the G20 is not a photo opportunity. AU must prepare itself to make a contribution and a meaningful contribution. Hence, therefore, the identification of what we call knowledge partners. So there's a long list of what we call knowledge partners. I'm sorry, my brother, your institute is not among those, but it's a long list. I think that's to do with the agenda of the G20 in the main about economic development. Your expertise, as we understand them, relates to peace and security. In future, if the G20 agenda was to expand to include peace and security issues, but I'm sure you would be greatly invited. Now, South Africa is the only African country that sits in the G20. South Africa has therefore signaled her intention to share experiences and lessons with the AU. In this regard, we have invited the AU team to visit South Africa so that they could meet with all the South African ministers or ministries that deal or participate at the G20. Attended to that, the South African G20 Sherpa, upon request, would be coming to Addis Ababa to have an exchange with the PRC. And we are hoping that that will be done before the end of March. Program Director and dear colleagues, let me conclude by making a statement that says, the priorities that the AU has determined will go a long way towards the actualization of the second 10-year implementation plan of Agenda 2063. As I said earlier on, these priorities will be reviewed after 3 years. At AU's G20 participation is a firm step towards achieving one of the 7 aspirations that we have under Agenda 2063, which is aspiration 7. Aspiration 7, we're talking about an Africa that is strong, united, resilient, and an influential global player. So an opportunity has been availed for Africa to play her rightful place within the G20. Thank you very much for listening to us.
Shall we give Ambassador another round of applause? And for the entire panelists, actually, you know, we've taken them out of their comfort zones into a space where we are now asking questions. And they need to appreciate the diplomatic sensitivity and still come across very intellectually and as plainly as possible. And so far, it's really been very excellent. And Ambassador, thanks so much for unpacking the G20 question. There are many who are asking so many issues. But I wanted to give you some questions to also chew on. The issue of representation. It's now clear, at least from the rumor we hear, pending the official release of the decisions, that the representation will be at the level of the chairperson of the union, assisted by the chairperson of the commission. And I was really wondering, with South Africa's experience, is that ideal? Should we not keep the G20 technical so that the chair of the commission rather goes there with perhaps a position endorsed by the assembly to do technical work instead of maybe the chairperson of the union, who, by the way, changes every year. I would like to take your mind on that. And then also the issue of, you spoke about the 6 priorities, which I think are really excellent. But I would appreciate if we could have a sense of what strategy we are rolling out as Africa to make sure that we get that coming through. Looking at the focus of the G20 and how we would like to go about it. Ladies and gentlemen, so we have the submission from the ambassadors, but please permit me to go around and seek their responses to the questions I gave them initially as a first round. And then afterwards, we can open it up for discussions. And so I would like to maybe start with Ambassador Makaya. Yours is still fresh. You just finished. And so if you could reflect on the two questions, then we can take it from there.
Is it working? Is it working? Or is it me? Okay, thank you very much. I put it this way. My minister, when addressing the assemble late evening of Sunday, made a point that participating in the G20 is a huge responsibility. And therefore, we can only be effective as the AU if we fully prepare our participation. If we fully prepare for our participation. Of course, the G20 has got a summit, heads of state of the G20 and so on and so on. That's where then the chair of the union would be sitting there, supported by the chair of the commission. So that is at the head of state level. Not much is done. The work gets done well before the summit. Well before the summit, through sectoral committees. And in the main, the work of the G20 is done by the shepherds. At ministerial level, because there's also now what called the G20 Ministers of Foreign Affairs. I understand they are meeting now in Brazil. We have agreed as the AU that the chair of the Executive Council, in other words, the foreign minister of a country that is chairing the union, supported by the chairperson of the commission, shall represent the AU at the G20 Ministers of Foreign Affairs. This is a high political meeting. And I believe that the chair of the Executive Council and the chair of the commission shall be in a position to tackle the issues that will be under discussion. And then, of course, the sectoral meetings I've spoken about. But I think your point, let's put it this way. There's a strong view within the union, the AU. I think it's informed by our own history. We are currently a bit reluctant to cede powers to intergovernmental bodies like commission. We're currently a bit reluctant. And there should be no intention to try to push us to really want to cede some powers to the commission. The way the discussions have evolved, in the main, they sought to create a kind of a very good mix between the country that will be chairing and the commission, whoever will be representing the commission. But most importantly, in terms of the strategy, I think your question was about the strategy, your second question. Yes, we've identified the priorities now. So greater work will be undertaken, among others, by the knowledge partners. We've got a long list of, I did not read them out, it's a long list. That includes Outer NEPAD, APRM, includes UNECA, REX, and others. And those who in their respective competencies would do some research to inform the common African position. Our strategy is to develop a common African position, because whoever goes there, he or she will be articulating a common African position. In this regard, there was an idea from the Commission originally that maybe we may wish to consider having a mid-year summit, full summit, to look at our preparations for the G20. But the PRC and then, of course, the ministers supported, the Executive Council supported that, felt that that would be a bit too much. And that the ministers, Executive Council, requested the Assembly to delegate G20 preparations to the mid-year Executive Council. So in other words, between now and June, July, the relevant commissioners would have agenda items, would then put forward for consideration by AU member states some ideas, and there will be discussion and so on and so on, leading to the Executive Council. After the July Executive Council, then that's when then would have what we call a common African position. So I think I need to salute the AU collectively for the manner they've taken this huge assignment to prepare themselves for participating in this. We've developed a quite clear a sort of a roadmap on how we're going to engage on this. But as I said, the only one that remains a bit of a challenge until it is completely sorted out is that of a Sherpa. You see, the Sherpas have been meeting since about November last year. Now, it was only this weekend that we elected the chair of the union, who, if the one of the options would then go through, he has to appoint a Sherpa. And that Sherpa would go to meetings that have already been going on. So you're already putting the individual in an awkward position. Luckily, Commissioner Mochanga has been attending some of these, the Sherpa meetings. So I'm sure there will be a greater interface between him and whoever will be appointed by the chair of the union. And of course, if we're to decide on that option, but let me because of our experience at the G20, South Africa has been advising that the AU may wish to consider appointing the Commissioner for Economic Affairs as our Sherpa. And that's informed by several issues. One of those is the content of work at G20. Two is that a commissioner, we're not looking at the incumbent. The incumbent will go soon, I think February next year. So we are looking at the commissioner, at an individual and an African that will be elected February next year as a commissioner for economic and trade affairs. And that person would be in that office at least for 4 years. If she or is lucky, she gets a second term, meaning he or she will be there for 8 years. We know what it guarantees you of continuity, familiarity about the issues, and effective participation, and most importantly, accessibility to the AU member states through the PRC. So there's a bit of risk that if the Sherpa is appointed by the country that is sharing the union, it might be a bit difficult to have that personality coming to Addis to interface with the PRC. So those are the issues that are still hanging there. But I was just sharing you South Africa's own view. As I said, it's an advice. And as I said, it's one of the options that are there. And we're looking forward to getting to finalize this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think there might be questions. We will come to you. Please keep your questions ready. I would like to now turn to Ambassador Churchill. I had asked two questions regarding your submission on the outcomes of the summit. One was for you to reflect from your intellectual space. The summit vis-a-vis the challenges, those things that are eating us up as Africans, and whether you think we are adding, I mean, it guarantees some solutions so far. Second was also how Gaza became a big issue, and it's kind of stole the show from where I sit. And then also, you know, we are eager to know how President Kagame assessed the report and eventually handed over. Just your reflections.
Yeah, first on the issue of general assessment, I would like to say that I have about 4 takeaways. The first is that this summit was, we had the return of consensus and African solidarity. That was the first thing that, because as I told you all along, we have been thinking that it has been difficult for Africans to come and speak with one voice, and then in most cases we ended up in elections, competitive elections. But here we realized that the main takeaway is that there was a whole spirit of consensus building that prevailed throughout the summit. The second issue is that of renewed partnership. Ambassador Makaya has just talked about the G20, and you could see the efforts we are making in order to participate as a global actor within the G20. But also, more importantly, within that still frame of partnership, we also Brazil, the return of Brazil as a different type of strategic partner. You know that when Brazil is coming in, it's they make it clear that they are the country with the second largest population of people of African descent after Nigeria. And so to Brazil, partnering with Africa is not just a foreign policy issue. It is also a domestic policy issue. So Brazil came in, and we saw His Excellency President Lula da Silva. He was very eloquent and very passionate. The way he spoke about his engagement with Africa. He was coming here for the 21st time. So that was another issue, the partnership. The other thing is, like I said, the quest for Africa to become an actor in global affairs with the G20. But also you will see, and I think it goes to the next question, that there were many delegations that were they were pushing that Africa should become a mediator on the issue in Gaza, just like they did with the also Ukrainian issue. So you see, Africa is still asserting itself as a global actor. And then I would also say that my general assessment, we all know what the civil society was saying, but most of the meetings were very late. I think most of us who have been here, it was 7 a.m. For meetings. That was something. And it finally ended up for us to realize the role of the PRC, because without the PRC, those meetings would not have. Because at the end of the day, when it came to from 5 o'clock to 7, it was essentially a PRC affair, whether it was during the executive council or it was at the level of the conference. It became a PRC meeting. So you realize that at the end of the day, the PRC is still the backbone of I'm talking about the ambassadors here now who could stay right up to 7 a.m. In the morning. So those are all issues to be reflected on. Yeah. Then on Gaza, I have 3 issues. The first is there was at the level of the opening sessions, you could see that there were a lot of condemnations from the main speakers, be it the chair of the union, the chairs incoming and outcoming, then also of the chair of the commission. It was clear that there was that. The second issue is that there was support for South Africa, South Africa's position when it came to the action in the ICG by most of the speakers. And then the third issue about Gaza is like what I've just said, that there were some delegations, about 7 of them, that indicated that it is not just a matter of condemnation or legal action, but we should also move to mediation. In other words, the Africans should position themselves and have a goodwill mission, to the Middle East, so as to talk to both parties and also have their opinion. So those are the 3 issues when we talk about Gaza.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. I think that is very helpful. And I would like to turn to Excellency Ambassador of Uganda. I had also asked 2 questions. First, for you to give your very personal reflection and advice for the new members who are coming. How can they perform better? What role can they play for the PSC to be better? And then secondly, I think there was one that Ambassador Churchill just alluded to, the issue of representation at the highest level at the summit. And the example he gave about how it becomes PRC at the end of the day is particularly important. So if you add the fact that we don't get high numbers of presidents coming through and their delegation, and you bring in the number of those who fly out after the opening, and then those who go out and leave only the ambassadors or foreign ministers, are we already in a zone where the Pan-African spirit, the eagerness to use the AU as a theater for the search for solutions, are we seeing apathy? And citizens, should we be concerned already? Because we thought that if AU had answers, all of them should be eager to be here. What are your reflections?
Let me start from the point of advice. I would just state that the member states who are members of the Peace and Security Council are AU member states, and the ambassadors who come from those member states. When I made my submission, you may recall that I stated that across the continent, we are facing difficult situations. I listed them, including disagreement amongst member states, just to mention one. So as we come in as members of the PSC, we must disaggregate between what is for the continent and for my country. In most cases, you may find yourself conflicted. I'll give an example that Uganda, as a member of Peace and Security Council, is also a member of troops contributing countries in Somalia. And we were also members, we were in the DRC in two different outfits. One as part of the East African Standby Force. The second one as agreed upon bilaterally between Uganda and DRC on the fight against ADF. In most cases, when they come, maybe I would state that in May last year, when Uganda chaired the Peace and Security Council, and we had a meeting of heads of state and government, a summit at that level, to be chaired by President Yoweri Museveni. But on 26th at dawn, Al-Shabaab attacked our base, killed so many soldiers of Uganda. Now we had to decide on whether to go on with the topic which was already decided on, and that was the Sudan, or we get diverted and begin handling the issue of what happened to Uganda in Mogadishu. In his wisdom, the president never mentioned that. So we were able to continue with the issue of Sudan. And I would like to state that that was separating what is directly against you and what is for the continent. I would advise the same to the new members coming, that there are so many issues that will be affecting them as member states. So it's important to look at the bigger picture, that you make a contribution, but it shouldn't become personal. Thirdly, the member states coming in will be rotating as chairs every month. And my advice is we have a big bank of information, knowledge, and research results from institutes like IPSS, and Amani, Africa, that are very useful. We would advise that they make use of these institutions that have had long period of working with the Peace and Security Council. We'd also like to put on table and remain seized of the matter of the adequate and predictable and sustainable funding for the peace support operations by African Union, even if the UN Security Council has made a pronouncement that we think is going to be useful. We should also use early warning mechanism more and preventive diplomacy. We should make use of the panel of the wise so that they become more active in our work. We should try to calm down the fire instead of pouring petrol in the fire, which is already burning across the continent. Like I stated before, we should make use of those who are in the council before and draw from their experience, knowledge, and we use that to make the council move. A little complicated, but I'll state it. Maybe I begin by saying that on the question of the highest level of representation at the summit, One, let me give credit to the host country, Ethiopia. This country has developed itself at the highest level as the conference hub. I always tell people that if you brought 10,000 or 20,000 delegates and asked the government of Ethiopia within 1 week to organize a conference, they would do it without any hassle. And therefore, first we give credit to this capital of Africa for the good work they do in hosting our very important guests. Secondly, we had a distortion during COVID when we started meeting online, and person-to-person touch almost got lost. And then we were told, if you come for a meeting, close you, like my daughter there, make sure you mask, sit at a distance, don't greet people. Oh my God. It was so scary. However, I just would like to state that we never lacked quorum at any stage, be it at the PRC, at the Council of Ministers meeting, at the Heads of State and Government Summit. And we should agree that if delegations or head of delegation is given full authority by the head of state and government, we treat that as a country represented. My brother, Ambassador Churchill, said that we had over 50 delegations. So I think that. And if you put off those who automatically were not supposed to be part because of situations that they're going through, I think it was good. However, we should not hide our heads under the sand, that we should make sure that the summit becomes more interesting with impactful results. And also not, maybe we should work around making less the agenda items that can easily be handled and decided upon, and not in a very complex manner, because you may recall that Ambassador Makaya said, I don't recall the ruling. I don't want to tell you what may not be the same. At one point, maybe you don't know what you decided upon. And when it comes out, you could have reported differently. And the capital will be asking you, oh, what is this? Your initial report read like this. If we have so much facts and agenda items and so many decisions, they are prone manipulation, because we are dealing with human beings. They are prone manipulation for some people's advantage. Maybe that is important to state. Last but not least, we must also agree that we should bring ourselves to order. Because if one member state holds us hostage from the experts level, the PRC, Council of Ministers, and to the level of the summit. And if we divide the man hour, you'll discover that the back and forth from 1 or 2 member states could have been about 24 hours to themselves. I think diplomacy must have a limit. Thank you.
I think for those in your circles, they pretty much appreciate your coded message about the last point you made. Because sometimes it comes up, and even those of us outside, we get to appreciate how difficult it can be. But why don't we get a bit of lobbying before some of those things happen in session? Is it something that could also resolve it? Maybe. So, ladies and gentlemen, your panelists and their reflections, and I think it touches on a wide range of areas. I'm not too sure I can ask all the questions. I will not be doing justice to the room of very intelligent people and interests. And so I would like to turn to you now to come with your questions. And I think with the experience we have here, should we restrict ourselves to your submissions only, or we can go 360 about the summit? Ambassador Makaya says go anyway. So please, you have it ready for you. Any questions you want to ask? Keep it brief so we can entertain a couple of rounds. Any lady first before? That is the norm on our platforms. 2 ladies, and then you. We will take 4, and then we'll come back. So please take the mic to the lady at the far end. Please introduce yourself, and then keep your question or input very brief. At the back.
Hi, good morning. I am a PhD researcher from an Italian university and here for research fieldwork. And I have 2 questions, one for the South African ambassador, and it is on the collaboration between South Africa and the African Union Sherpa, as you described, and African Union Commission on what the African Union and South Africa as the country and not as the member of the African Union will collaborate together or not at the G20. And the other one is for the ambassador of Cameroon. You were saying that Africa should become a mediator also in international matters such as Ukraine and Gaza. Can you a little bit develop and precise what do you mean exactly for a mediator? You mean that, for example, there should be like a forum of discussion inside the African Union or in the African Union Commission on these issues, or it should be national initiatives, for example, the mediation, for example, the one coming from Macky Sall 2 years ago to Russia, and so more like a national-based, let's say, initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you very much for keeping it brief. The second one is also a lady. Yes. Yes.
Merci beaucoup. Je crois qu'il y a une traduction simultanée. Si je peux faire
allow ambassador to put on.
Okay.
All of us. Please go ahead.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour à tous. Merci beaucoup pour cet événement et merci Madame l'ambassadrice et Messieurs les ambassadeurs pour vos présentations. Je m'appelle Marie-Lou Bonnot, je suis de l'ambassade de France. J'avais 2 questions. La première pour vous, Madame l'ambassadrice. Vous avez parlé des décisions qui n'étaient pas forcément appliquées par les États membres. C'est quelque chose qui a été aussi souligné par le président de la Commission à l'ouverture du sommet. Est-ce que pendant le sommet, il y a eu des discussions, des décisions justement qui ont été prises pour aller dans le sens d'une meilleure mise en œuvre des décisions qui sont prises par les États membres? Ma seconde question concerne le thème de l'année 2025 dont vous avez parlé, Monsieur l'ambassadeur du Cameroun, sur les réparations. Est-ce que vous pouvez déjà nous partager quelques éléments de réflexion sur les implications de ce thème, sur peut-être une feuille de route, une note de concept, ou voilà ce qui sera attendu en 2025 et ce qui est déjà préparé par l'Union africaine. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Do you still have your hand up? I'll come to you, Javin. So let me turn to this side to bring the last one, right? Liz, do you want to? So there was a question about the implementation of decisions. And she's asking whether the summit took any decision to make sure that the implementations do happen. And then second had to do with the implications of the theme of the year in 2025, which has to do with reparations. What are we planning? What is Africa planning to do, and what are the implications of that? So let me widen the room. Yes, the participant from the Embassy of Burkina Faso.
Merci pour la parole donnée. Je voudrais très rapidement féliciter les ambassadeurs pour la qualité de leur présentation. Et j'ai une question qui est adressée à Je suis Bernard Tago, conseiller à l'ambassade du Burkina Faso à Addis Abeba. Je m'excuse. Ma question s'adresse à son Excellence l'ambassadeur Kersil. On retient que pendant ce sommet, il y a eu plusieurs sujets qui ont été abordés, et entre autres la question de Gaza. Mais malheureusement, il a été également relevé que la question concernant le terrorisme a été reportée à une date ultérieure. Est-ce qu'il est possible de savoir les raisons qui ont prévalu au report du débat concernant la question du terrorisme? Bon, quand on sait que ce phénomène est à la base de plusieurs problèmes aujourd'hui en Afrique, les questions humanitaires, même les questions de rupture anticonstitutionnelle de gouvernance, les questions de confiance entre les États au niveau de certains CIR comme au niveau de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Est-ce qu'on peut savoir ce qui a vraiment sous-tendu à ce report et qu'est-ce qui est véritablement envisagé? Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you very much. I will take the last question in this round from the middle seat row. Yes, the delegates there. Please, I'll come to you and I'll start with your section.
Thank you, Excellencies, for your enlightening speech. And I'm from a mission of China to the African Union. I have one small question. Is that we noticed that in this summit, there are some member states that have been suspended its membership of the African Union, but several of them are still invited to attend the assembly. So I'm wondering what is the reason behind this invitation, and are there any thinkings behind it? And yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Very important question. Please permit us to discuss that, then I'll come back for another round. Excellencies, we would appreciate if you can keep your submissions brief so we can entertain another round. Who want to take it first? Ambassador Makaya, you want to?
Thank you very much. Let me propose to address two questions. The first question was directed at us as South Africa, and I would also then attempt to address the question by from the Embassy of China.
Okay.
My sister just to underscore the determination of the Republic of South Africa to work with the AU within the G20. This determination has been pronounced at various levels. Next year, 2025, South Africa will be hosting and chairing the G20. And we'll be working closely with the AU in the preparations for that G20 summit. As I said, I hope you heard me that we are ready to receive the AU team in South Africa to interface with the South African government departments that deal with the G20 so that they can have a bit of an appraisal and understanding of how deep this participation will be and possible financial implications. That would then help a bit because the AU at some point would have to prioritize. Commissioner Muchanga keeps on telling us about, I don't know, 200 or so, 300 meetings of the G20. I mean, at some point, the AU would have to sit and just try to prioritize which meetings they would participate and for what reason. Now, the colleague from the Embassy of China, you cannot possibly have suspended AU member states being invited to an AU meeting. The suspension of an AU member state is very clear that this country is being suspended from participating in all AU activities. As we sit here, we have never, there's no suspended member states that was part of the AU meetings. That delegation may have been around Addis Ababa from suspended member states. That's a game of diplomacy. But they were not invited by the AU, certainly not. But just also to underline the strategic commitment of the AU to assist the suspended member state to transition as soon as practically possible to return to constitutional normalcy. As AU member states, we wouldn't want to see even a single AU member state suspended. We all want the 55 AU member states sitting at a meeting at all levels. So I just wanted to deal with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Makaya. And I just wanted to, maybe before I go to the question of implementation of decision, I just wanted to add that to dispel apathy by member states, you'll discover that all the member states try as much as possible to pay their subscriptions and financial obligations. That is one form of commitment. Implementation of decisions. We always want to level them in about 3 or 4 different categories. One, some of them have budget implications, and it becomes difficult to implement without finances. 2, some of them are duplicated from the previous decisions, and we always try as much as possible to make sure that they are reconciled so that they don't work in a parallel manner, but they augment each other. 3, we also know there some are just as a result of impunity. those who just do not listen to the decisions of heads of state and government or the decision of the ministers that are given to the commission, because it goes to different departments and ends up with different individuals, and some don't give a damn. Thank you. And also maybe we put the numbers. Some of the decisions can become too many, and it becomes a little difficult to try to see how you implement them. But I don't dispel the third one, that there are those who have taken it upon themselves that let them talk, will not implement. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Churchill, there are a couple of them remaining, which I think you can take a shot at. The issue of the theme of the year 2025 on reparations and what it means, and the issue of mediation in Gaza. And then also from the Burkina Faso embassy, he's asking, Gaza was discussed, why not terrorism?
Thank you. First, on the issue of mediation, as I said, there were about 7 member states that put it on the agenda when we were discussing Gaza. They said it's beyond condemnation and the legal action that which were supported. There is also the need for mediation, and that Africa could play that role. And I would like to say that apart from the issue of the Russo-Ukrainian crisis, this is something that Africa has done when it comes to a crisis in the Middle East. You will remember that after the 1967 war, there was a committee of wise men, of 7 wise men of the OAU that was put in place to make a goodwill mission to the Middle East to discuss with both Israel and our Arab brothers. So it is not something that is new. It is something that is part of the way the AU has been looking at the crisis in the Middle East. And you also know that this one thing too that we did not highlight was that most delegations that took the floor reiterated the 2-state stand of the AU, which means both an Israeli and a Palestinian state, and which because of this, most of the African countries, some African countries felt that it was we were in a better position to mediate. So that was what came out. The second issue on the reparations, I will also say that this is an old issue. You know, since the 1990s, we've been having with Chief Abiola coming out with this issue of reparations for Africa. But I would say that the Ghana last year organized an important conference, and we came out with the Accra Proclamation. So there is already enough reflection on what has to be done. We have also been having cooperation with some of the African diaspora. It's also important to know that we have the UN decade on people of African descent, and there's a lot of information and issues to be addressed within that. So we think that there is a lot in order to carry this theme of the year forward, but we know that there would be a roadmap that would be addressed by the Ghanaian authorities. So I think there is enough groundwork that has already been done. On the issue of terrorism, I would say that they didn't take forward the issue of, they didn't postpone. Terrorism was discussed in the report of the PS on peace and security in Africa and the state of security in Africa. and the normal condemnations and other things. It was highlighted and it was discussed and adopted within the frame of that report. But most importantly, what was postponed, the discussion was on the operationalization of the ministerial committee on counterterrorism. That is what was discussed, not the issue of terrorism itself. The report on peace and security handled that and it was adopted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Excellencies. I think for our online audience, we've gone past the time a bit. So please bear with us as we take another round of interactions. I would like us to take a last round. Please keep it brief, just one. The rest, we will have discussions over lunch. You know, the ambassadors will be with us, hoping they don't rush to another meeting so that you can have, you know, your chit chats usually with them. But all those burning questions, please raise your hand and let's entertain them briefly. Now, okay. You, and then I go to Javan, and then the lady, and then I come to you. My brother. Any other here? Okay. We'll take that, and then I will add the online audience. There are a number of questions online as well.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. My name is Abubakar Saman. I come from Uplift Initiative Ethiopia that really works on peace, making it peace building. So I have two questions for our panelists. The first one regarding the case of the war in Sudan, the conflict in Sudan, because none of us mentioned about these things in a detailed manner. So regarding Sudan, how African Union works to resolve the issue, like African Union resolves the issue in Ethiopia, Northern Ethiopia, our conflict. So what is the problem of resolving the conflict in Sudan? Because a lot of humanitarian crisis over there, and is part of a membership of African Union. So what's the role of African Union to do that things? And is there any international actors or involvements? Is there identification of the involvement of the international actor? The second question, I'm quick. The second question regarding to the representation in high-level international arena like G20 is beneficial or benefited the African states and African Union. So how about the case of the United Nations Security Council membership of the African states? What's the position of the African Union in that regard? I thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, the person next.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Bru Castello from Ndaras Youth Association, which works on youth leadership and diplomacy. Thank you for the privilege to ask you. I have two main questions, just to wrap up in short. The first one is for His Excellency Cameron to reflect on what it looks, the presentation, the participation, or the engagement of civil societies in AU Summit, especially in the 37th AU Summit, how it looks like. The last one is for His Excellency Ambassador of South Africa, how it's planned the engagement of users, especially in G20 participation, as AU becomes, gets the membership for G20, how it looks like, and is there anything planned to participate uses the major community of the Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jevan, an ambassador, I'm interested in that question. It looks like partners had a bit of challenge this time around, but I think that is more for the AUC than for yourselves. But it's a conversation we can have. Jevan.
Thank you very much, everyone. My name is Javin Pillay. I'm the SADC permanent representative to the African Union. So my questions relates to Article 16 of the PSC, which speaks about the relationship between the AU PSC and the REX. My question would be, how do we revitalize this relationship? How do we enhance this relationship? Article 16 clearly mentions that REX and AU collaborate on peace and security matters. We already know about this, but as at now, REX and REMS are invited here and then to brief the PSC. Like, for example, SADC is coming on the 4th of March under the chairmanship of Namibia to discuss about SAMIM and SAMI DRC. But should we make it a regular process whereby REX are called upon to discuss or brief the IPSC 3 times maybe per year, so that the IPSC is regularly briefed about things happening. So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the last?
Thank you very much.
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Excellencies, for your insights. I was wondering, since you mentioned the AU G20 membership, reforms of international financial institutions, AU as potential mediator in global conflicts, whether the reform of the UN Security Council has been part of the discussions of the last summit, in particular the African position or positions on these issues, and in particular whether you think that now that the EU is part of the G20, whether this could be or this could help make progress on the issue of the UN Security Council reform, and could possibly help also ensure a seat for Africa, whether as individual member states or as the EU at the table of the UN Security Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And lastly, but not the least, please, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity. And I would like also to thank the panelists for their wonderful summary and reflection. Having said that, my question is to know more about, because my name is Gurum Hailu, I'm coming from IGAD Health and Social Development Division, one of the RECs in Africa. I wanted to know the role of RECs given in the past, and we have heard that there is a new reform of the African Union to give more roles for regional economic communities for domestication and also working on the on behalf of the Community of Nations. The decision now in this recent summit includes many from peace and security to even making the manufacturing plan for Africa, like vaccines and also therapeutics to be manufactured in Africa. So we have taken lesson from COVID and we have to be prepared. So this decision is very timely and we are very happy. And what will be the role of RECs in having this implementation? And even in G20, if we are represented, the continent is represented, then the role of RECs should be also clearly specified. So I wanted to know more about, the discussion and the decision made during this summit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. The role of RECs, something on UN reform, involvement of CSOs in the summit, and then the RECs briefing the PSC. We are past our time, so if you can have 2 minutes each, I would really appreciate it. Yes, speak to the spirit of the question, then we can wrap up.
Well, okay. One, there was a question that was asked about civil society. I would like to say that there was an active civil society participation within the context of this summit, but we have to look at them within the side events. So there were about 20 of those side events, and so you had some major civil society actors that were participating during this 37th summit. The issue of the role of RECs, I would say that in most cases where it has been institutionalized, we have MOUs with the various RECs and in terms of between the PSC and the RECs. But I also want to say this because we have been, most of us, whenever we chair, we usually bring in RECs to come and brief us. But in some cases, it is the fact that the RECs are not available. Let us be honest. The RECs are not available when we invite them to come and brief the PSC. They are not there in some cases. And it is good that, well, you say in most cases, I say in some cases, but we will like that they should be, the RECs should take this issue more seriously. I also want to say that within the context of the reforms, there is the ongoing reform, we have this issue of division of labor. And I think that when these things are properly clarified, the role of the RECs will be properly clarified, and so that is with regard to the RECs. The other issue for me on the issue of the UN Security Council, and so and the G20, I think all of this, they want to show Africa is emerging as, or the AU is emerging as an actor in international relations, you know, as an actor in its own self, like just like the EU, where they could also have membership in the UN, they could have membership in other organizations as an actor, and not apart from the various member states of the African Union. I would like to give the floor to my colleagues to continue.
Ambassador, 2 minutes.
1.
Excellent.
How do we intend to handle the conflict in Sudan? I think when I made my submission, I already told you that we have so many processes, some not speaking to each other. First of all, we want them to speak to each other. That is one. But most importantly is the violence against the women, the children, and the innocent civilians. So we would like to insist on permanent ceasefire so that they have humanitarian corridors for the situation, for those in the disadvantaged situations to get food and non-food items. However, I would like to say that AU has never stopped having a discussion on the issue of Sudan. And I think I told you that we have now an ad hoc high-level panel that is supposed to handle the case again, so that we remain seized of the matter, but it's a very unfortunate situation. I don't think there's one single day that AU has not spoken about the issue of Sudan, because it affects all of us. But now we are insisting that all stakeholders must be included in the dialogue that is upcoming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just take 1 minute. I think there was a question about the youth involvement at the G20. For now, the youth is not participating in the G20. But in the case of the AU, earlier on, I spoke about the knowledge partners. Among the knowledge partners, I see a possibility of the African youth making an input through ECOSOC or through REX. So that's the opportunity where the youth could be making an input towards a common African position. But inviting the youth to go to a summit for now, it's not on the cards. But we expect the African youth to think deeply and make that contribution through ECOSOC, depending on what is on the agenda, whether it's about climate change, whether it's about trade, about investment, manufacturing, all those. The youth, the African youth must have a say. Let me end there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you have any parting shots. 10 seconds. What do you want to say finally? With Ambassador, you have the mic. 10 seconds.
Africa is the continent we have, and African Union is the only vehicle that will put us together in an integrated manner so that we achieve our aspiration. So we remain very conscious of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Makaya.
And thank you very much. I think mine, program director, is just to appreciate the attendance. My first participation was 2020. It was February 2020 at Hyatt. Now I say that the participation is tripled. So what it means, program director, in the main, is that this interaction is a well sought after interaction. So it would then require ambassadors to come fully prepared and be able to share frankly and freely with the colleagues who would have taken time to participate. Thank you very much then for the question.
Thank you. And Ambassador Churchill?
Mine is to say that let's keep the spirit of consensus and African solidarity that was exhibited during this 37th summit, and which also shows that Pan-Africanism has come back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, for your wisdom and readiness to share with us. I do hope your doors will remain open, because we will keep knocking on your doors for more. And I want to believe that a lot of the colleagues in the room will catch up with you over lunch on a few things as well. In wrapping up, as you know, this event is powered by three institutions, the Institute for Security Studies, IPSS, and Amani Africa. And so in wrapping up, I would like to invite one of the partners to give us closing remarks, brief and straight to the point. I would like to invite Sion Hargos from Amani Africa.
Thank you so much, Andy. It's been a very brilliant discussion that we had today. Yes, so let me just start up by thanking our very esteemed panelists, Excellencies. Thank you so much for taking up the time to engage us as we discuss what happened during the summit week. Also, participants, for your presence, for making time to join us in this very important discussion. So in wrapping up, like Andy said, I'm going to be very brief. I think some of the very key issues or key takeaways that we wanted to take from the summit have been highlighted. For me, I think the identification of priorities and representation in the G20 has been a major outcome of the session, of the summit. We've all been looking forward to see, yes, AU has made it into the G20, but how do we actually productively engage to make sure that Africa's priorities are reflected within the G20? So a very remarkable outcome, I believe. Also, the due note to the issue of interstate tensions in the continent, I think specifically within the framework of peace and security concerns, I think that was something that needed to be reflected on. So very interesting that this has also taken center stage. The new dynamics of the Peace and Security Council, also how institutions like ourselves, IPSS, ISS, and Amani Africa can ensure that the newly constituted council will take on the responsibility of addressing key challenges that we are faced with in the continent today. Aside from that, I think also what His Excellency Ambassador Monono has highlighted, you know, this return of consensus and African solidarity. I think that's very interesting and also very critical, especially at the time that we are in today. As we're seeing a lot of shifts in the multilateral space, I think it's very important for Africa to forge that sort of consensus to ensure that we are effectively represented, but also shaping the new global order. So having said that, let me not keep us away from lunch. Thank you again, once again. And also on behalf of Amani Africa, I would like to thank our partners, ISS and IPSS, for this collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank all the online audience for staying throughout. We couldn't come to the round of questions from you, but all of them are fully acknowledged. And some of them came in during the responses as well. So thank you so much. It's time for lunch. We appreciate the fact that that is usually an extension of deliberations. Unfortunately, we cannot say the same for the online audience. So I would like to now invite you for lunch and to thank you so much, as my colleague said, for being part of the discussion. See you next time when we make the call for another discussion. Thank you.